let's fast forward then to 2015. And this is one of the moments where I can say throughout my adult life and also just going back to my ministry, I've been working for the Gospel Coalition for 5 years by this time, but I can remember feeling like we might lose everything. Not our faith in Jesus Christ, not his promises to us, but it seemed like institutionally, financially, politically, it seemed like everything was arrayed against Orthodox Christians and other religious adherents who were opposed to same-sex marriage. I can even remember the specific date. It was March 31st, 2015. The scene was Indianapolis, Indiana. Governor Mike Pence, of course, would much more famously go on to be vice president under Donald Trump in his first administration. But despite having been a stalwart Republican and evangelical Christian, would not sign a religious liberty bill. Again, this is just a few short months before the Obergefell v. Hodges decision. Would not sign a religious liberty bill that would exempt Christians from needing to, in their business dealings and other public dealings, to endorse same-sex marriage. Basically, it was a way of saying, if you deny services or something like that, it's not a form of discrimination. The pushback specifically, and this is what's so significant here, the pushback specifically from the corporate community, from big businesses, was something that was relatively new to American politics, where the major corporations of the United States, instead of being on the sort of Republican or conservative side of an equation, it's not like they were always bastions of anti-abortion activism or something like that. But this was one of the most extreme examples of them really putting the full weight of their economic power on the scales against biblical sexuality and more broadly Orthodox Christian belief. And specifically in Indiana, it was pressure from the business sales force, part of the broader tech culture, which at the time leaned heavily progressive on sexuality issues and other political issues in general. That was a moment where I felt we are in very serious trouble, because who is on our side? We can't trust the courts. We can't trust the voters. We can't trust the politicians, certainly not in the Democratic Party, especially that was pushing so aggressively for this. Republicans were backing off there. The corporations were weighing in with just their massive influence, essentially stigmatizing any city or state or anybody who wouldn't go all in on this so-called pride agenda. Now, when I see people talk about the negative world that we as Christians supposedly live in today in the United States, I think this is what they mean. I think this is the best interpretation, and I can relate to it at this level. I absolutely felt like at this time something substantial had changed. The floor, the kind of like trap door had been pulled from underneath us, or a rug had been pulled out from underneath us. This was a very scary time. I'll give you another illustration of what it felt like at this time. Shortly after the presidential election in 2016, I met with leaders from the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities. They had a number of regional gatherings around the United States. I participated in the one in Atlanta. Now, this happened just after President Trump was elected, before he took office. But all of us, this really caught probably everybody in the room by surprise. All of the work that the CCCU had been doing was to prepare for a Hillary Clinton administration, starting in 2017, carrying on many of the policies, especially in this realm, from President Obama, or perhaps even becoming more aggressive. I think I'm accurately characterizing the read of that room to say that I saw no viable hope or strategy for resisting the Clinton administration. And I don't mean in the realm of public policy for the sake of the family, for the sake of children, for the sake of our neighbors, for the sake of truth. I mean, to protect Christian institutions other than the church. I think there were a number of safeguards for the church still in place, but protecting, again, colleges and universities, nonprofit ministries of a wide variety, especially ones that address the family, like adoption agencies. But I saw no viable hope or resistance strategy for being able to resist any number of different attacks from the government, whether it be from the NCAA in the realm of sports. In other words, they could be expelled from the NCAA if a university had a policy on sexuality that prohibited homosexuality, or really anything else for that matter. It all would have been considered discriminatory. So perhaps the NCAA could have issued those sanctions. Perhaps federal funding would have been revoked. Keep in mind, there's a wide variety of federal funding, ranging from grants for grants for research, but also just the backing of federal loans. Widespread within Christian colleges, especially private universities, where a lot of students and their families take out loans. Those could be easily revoked. But the problem was actually worse back then, believe it or not. In fact, just the very existence of these schools, the very fact that they had a policy of this sort could have been a violation in the eyes of the courts and the eyes of the executive and legislative branches of discrimination, and could be simply shut down for that reason alone. Either change, or you're going to be found against the law, liable to lawsuits, perhaps even some forms of criminal prosecution. Now, I've had many people say to me since then that would not have happened because the courts would have intervened. And that's certainly possible. Now, these are the same courts that we're talking about here right today, the same court that produced the 5-4 decision in Obergefell v. Hodges. Is perhaps the case that Justice Kennedy, for example, could have flipped to the other side and said, on the one hand, I think that this absolutely should be allowed, even required of everybody in the United States, every municipality, to allow for these same-sex marriages. And at the same time, I don't think that these other institutions should be shut down as a result of this decision. Now, we're going to come back a little bit later to see why I'm not very confident in that. Specifically, it's what Justice Kennedy wrote in his majority decision about harm. If denying people their constitutional rights to same-sex marriage is a matter of grave harm, then I don't see how allowing for religious liberty exemptions, conscience exemptions, would be viable. So you're really looking at a very dangerous situation that I can understand why so many people would feel as though was a kind of cultural transition into a negative world